New airport rules just went live in June 2026, and the penalties for breaking them are severe. Think you're ready for your next flight? Think again. Starting in June 2026, new airport and travel rules are catching thousands of passengers off guard, and some travelers are facing delays, denied boarding, extra screening, and costly penalties simply because they didn't know the rules had changed. What used to be perfectly acceptable at the airport may now trigger problems before you even reach your gate. From identification requirements and carry-on restrictions to security procedures and international travel updates, these changes could affect almost every passenger. In today's video, we're breaking down the new airport rules starting in June 2026 and showing you exactly what you need to know to avoid mistakes, delays, and unexpected penalties. Stay tuned. Some of these changes may surprise you. Rule change number 7, the airline junk fee transparency rule. The rule airlines lobbied against for 2 years is now law, and they hoped you'd never notice. Starting here, with the rule change, airlines fought the hardest, delayed the longest, and have been quietest about since implementation. The DIAT's junk fee transparency rule, fully enforced from June 2026, requires airlines to disclose all mandatory fees and ancillary charges at the very beginning of the booking process rather than at the end. It specifically prohibits the drip pricing practice that has defined airline ticket booking for the past decade. Drip pricing, displaying a low base fare that escalates through mandatory fees, seat selection charges, carry-on fees, and add-ons revealed progressively through the booking funnel, is now explicitly prohibited. Airlines must display the total cost of travel, including all mandatory fees in the initial fare display before the passenger has entered personal information or begun the booking process. A base fare of $89 that becomes $162 after mandatory fees must be displayed as $162 from the first search result. The rule specifically requires upfront disclosure of fees for the first checked bag, carry-on bag fees where applicable, seat selection fees for standard seats, and cancellation or change fees, all disclosed before fare selection, not at checkout. What most people don't realize is that the rule currently applies to airline-owned booking platforms, but has a phased implementation for third-party platforms. Expedia, Google Flights, and Kayak have until December 2026 to achieve full compliance. Until then, passengers booking through third-party sites may still encounter the prohibited drip pricing that airline websites can no longer legally display. And this is where it gets crazy. The enforcement mechanism includes a passenger complaint pathway at the DOT generating financial penalties per violation per passenger. Several carriers received warning notices in April and May 2026 during the compliance preparation period. The enforcement is real, and the DOT has clearly signaled it intends to use it aggressively. The practical action is to book directly on airline websites where the rule is immediately enforceable, compare total displayed fares before entering personal information, and file a complaint at airconsumer.gov if you encounter drip pricing on any airline-owned platform. Airlines were hoping passenger awareness of this rule would stay low. It just got higher. But here's the twist. The next rule involves international arrivals and a new screening layer that is already generating significant passenger complaints at major hub airports right now. Rule change number 6, enhanced secondary screening for international arrivals. International arrivals are hitting a new invisible screening layer. Here's exactly what triggers it. CBP implemented enhanced secondary screening protocols for international arrivals in June 2026. A multi-layered update that increases both the frequency of secondary screening referrals and the scope of what those screenings involve. Most arriving passengers have no idea the new layer exists until they are already referred. The update has two visible components. First, expanded facial recognition deployment at international arrival primary inspection booths, now active at over 60 major U.S. international arrival facilities following a June 2026 extension to 27 additional airports. Passengers who legally opt out of facial recognition are now routed to a dedicated, manual verification lane rather than being processed at standard booths, increasing opt-out processing time from approximately 2 minutes to 8 to 12 minutes at most facilities. Second, a new behavioral detection layer at primary inspection. Additional questions triggered by algorithmic risk scoring combining flight origin, passenger travel history, customs declaration data, and real-time watch list cross-referencing. Passengers whose score exceeds an invisible threshold are routed to secondary screening regardless of their primary inspection answers. What most people don't realize is that the algorithm's triggers include inconsistencies between declared travel purpose and accommodation type, recent travel to countries on the expanded 90-day scrutiny list, and currency declaration amounts deviating significantly from the statistical profile of similar itineraries. None of these triggers are communicated to passengers. They are invisible scoring factors that determine secondary routing without the primary officer being required to explain the referral. Complete honesty on all declaration forms, specific and consistent answers to purpose and accommodation questions, and full awareness of your 90-day travel history before landing are the only reliable preparation against an invisible algorithm that is now making more routing decisions than human officers at primary inspection. Coming up is a rule change affecting something millions of travelers pack without knowing. The June 2026 enforcement has been dramatically tightened. Rule change number 5, new DOT refund rules for cancellations and significant delays. The DOT's refund rules are fully enforced now, and airlines must pay automatically. The Department of Transportation's final rule on airline refunds reached its full enforcement phase in June 2026, fundamentally changing what passengers receive when flights are canceled or significantly delayed, and specifically targeting the airline practice of offering travel credits when cash refunds are legally required. Under the June 2026 fully enforced rules, airlines must provide automatic cash refunds in the original payment method when a domestic flight is canceled for any reason, when a domestic flight departs or arrives more than 3 hours from scheduled time, when a significant routing change occurs, including additional connections or longer total travel time, or when a checked bag is significantly delayed in delivery. The word automatic is the entire change. Previous DOT guidance required refunds on request, placing the burden on passengers to know their entitlement and actively claim it. The June 2026 rule requires airlines to initiate the refund process proactively without passenger request. An airline that offers only travel credits in response to a qualifying cancellation without first offering a cash refund is in direct violation. Refunds must be processed within 7 business days for credit card purchases and 20 business days for cash or check purchases. Airlines missing this timeline face DOT enforcement action, a consequence several major carriers experienced during the initial enforcement phase, generating significant financial penalties they have since built compliance systems to avoid. What most people don't realize is that this rule applies retroactively to qualifying events. A cancellation that occurred before June 2026, but whose refund has not been processed, may still be subject to the new timeline requirements. Document every qualifying delay and cancellation. Request cash refunds explicitly by referencing the DOT June 2026 refund rule and file at airconsumer.gov if the refund is not processed within the required window. This completely changes what you should accept when a flight goes wrong. The next rule change involves something you pack and a zero tolerance enforcement update that is already catching travelers off guard. Rule change number 4, lithium battery zero tolerance enforcement. The lithium battery rule airlines enforced inconsistently is now zero tolerance, effective immediately. Lithium battery regulations for air travel have existed since 2008. But enforcement consistency at check-in and security has varied enormously between carriers, airports, and individual staff. A coordinated update effective June 2026 from the FAA, IATA, and ICAO has moved lithium battery enforcement to zero tolerance status at both check-in and security screening, with penalties extending beyond bag confiscation to flight removal in cases of deliberate non-compliance. The rules, as enforced from June 2026, are specific. Spare lithium batteries, any battery not installed in a device, must be in carry-on baggage only. This covers power banks, spare laptop batteries, camera batteries, drone batteries, and any standalone lithium cell. Spare lithium batteries found in checked luggage during X-ray screening are confiscated without exception. The June 2026 tightening specifically addresses high-capacity power banks, defined as those above 100 watt-hours. These have always required airline approval for carry-on transport and are prohibited in checked baggage. The update closes an enforcement gap where large power banks were passing through check-in without capacity verification because staff were not consistently calculating watt-hour capacity from the voltage and milliamp-hour figures printed on the device. What most people don't realize is that watt-hour capacity is calculated by multiplying voltage by amp-hour rating. A 20,000 milliamp hour power bank rated at 5 volts has exactly 100 watt hours at the threshold. The same device at a true output voltage of 5.1 volts exceeds the limit and technically requires airline approval. Carrying multiple high-capacity power banks compounds this. Cumulative quantities above 160 watt-hours require airline approval regardless of individual unit capacity. Audit every power bank in your bag before travel. Calculate watt-hour capacity from the printed figures. If you are near or above the threshold, contact your airline for approval before arriving at the airport. Rule change number 3, mobile boarding, pass backup requirements at international checkpoints. Your phone dying at the wrong moment just became significantly more serious than it used to be. Mobile boarding passes have been accepted at domestic and most international checkpoints for years, a convenience the vast majority of travelers now rely on exclusively. A June 2026 update from IATA, adopted by airports in 47 countries, including all major European hubs and most of the Asia-Pacific network, has introduced a backup verification requirement at international departure checkpoints that mobile-only travelers need to understand immediately. The new IATA standard requires passengers presenting mobile boarding passes at international departure gates to demonstrate device functionality and boarding pass accessibility within 30 seconds of presentation. A dead battery, a crashed boarding pass app, a device requiring connectivity that isn't available, any of these fails the 30-second standard. The consequence is referral to the ground handling desk for manual verification, a process taking a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes that during peak departure periods can result in missing the boarding window entirely and being denied boarding. The protection requires 3 steps. Download your boarding pass to your phone's wallet application. Apple Wallet or Google Wallet stores it locally without requiring connectivity or app functionality. Charge your device fully before departure and carry a portable power bank as standard travel equipment. Screenshot your boarding pass as a backup image in your camera roll, accessible even if the wallet application fails. What most people don't realize is that this standard applies at transit checkpoints as well as departure gates. A passenger connecting through Frankfurt, Singapore, Dubai, or any of the 47 adopting airports who cannot present a functional mobile boarding pass at the transit security checkpoint faces the same referral process, potentially affecting a tight connection in ways that are very difficult to recover from. But it doesn't end here. The next rule change is one that has already generated enormous passenger friction at gates across every major U.S. hub airport this month. Rule change number 2. Carry-on bag size enforcement standardized and tightened. Airlines are enforcing carry-on dimensions they previously ignored, and the gate fees are immediate. For years, carry-on size limits existed on paper, while enforcement at gates was inconsistent, selective, and largely symbolic. That era ended in June 2026. Following DOT pressure and a formal recommendation from the Aviation Consumer Protection Advisory Committee, major U.S. carriers including American, United, Delta, and Southwest implemented standardized carry-on enforcement protocols now, active on every flight at every gate. The standard carry-on size limit is 22 inches by 14 inches by 9 inches, including wheels and handles, unchanged from the published limit, but now enforced through standardized sizing boxes at boarding lanes that gate agents are required to use consistently. Bags that do not fit are gate-checked with fees applied immediately at the point of enforcement. The gate check fee for a bag failing the size test ranges from $35 to $75, depending on carrier and fare class. For basic economy passengers, whose tickets on most major carriers include no carry-on allowance beyond a personal item, the fee for a non-compliant carry-on can reach $99 on some routes. The personal item policy has simultaneously tightened. The personal item must fit completely under the seat in front of you. Items fitting in the overhead bin but not under the seat are being reclassified as carry-ons at enforcement, triggering the appropriate fee if the passenger's fare class doesn't include carry-on allowance. What most people don't realize is that the sizing boxes are fixed dimensions with zero flexibility. A bag carried on dozens of previous flights without incident will fail the sizer if it exceeds dimensions, and past accommodation creates no expectation of future accommodation under the new standard. Measure your carry-on pack to its travel capacity before every trip. A bag within limits empty may fail the sizer fully packed. And now, the final rule. The one that was extended 4 times and has no more extensions left. Rule change. Number 1, Real ID enforcement, fully active with 0 exceptions. The deadline extended 4 times is permanently closed, and there are absolutely no more extensions. Here it is, the first and most foundational rule change of June 2026, the one affecting more travelers than any other on this list, and the one where the penalty is the harshest and most immediate. Real ID enforcement for domestic air travel in the United States reached its final, non-negotiable implementation date in May 2025, and as of June 2026 is being applied with absolute checkpoint consistency that no previous enforcement phase reflected. The years of extensions, grace periods, and informal accommodations are permanently over. A standard state driver's license that does not meet real ID requirements will not get you through a TSA security checkpoint for domestic air travel. No exceptions, no supervisor appeals, no alternative processes. You will not pass through security, and you will miss your flight. The Real ID Act requires that state-issued identification used for federal purposes, including boarding domestic commercial flights, meet specific federal security standards. A Real ID-compliant card is marked with a star in the upper portion of the card. Most commonly, a gold or black star in the upper right corner. If your driver's license does not have this star, it is not Real ID compliant and cannot be used as sole identification at a TSA checkpoint. Acceptable alternatives include a U.S. passport card, global entry card, TSA pre-check card, Nexus or Sentry card, permanent resident card, military ID, or any federally issued photo ID. Any single one of these documents satisfies the identification requirement without a Real ID compliant driver's license. What most people don't realize is that the states with the highest concentrations of non-compliant residents are not rural or low-income states. They are states including New York, New Jersey, and California, where significant portions of the driver's license-holding population obtained licenses before Real ID compliance was required and have simply not yet renewed to a compliant version. If you live in a high-population state and have not renewed your license recently, the probability that you are non-compliant is meaningfully higher than the national average. The check takes 3 seconds. Look at your driver's license right now. Find the star. If it is there, you are compliant. If it is not there, you need either a Real ID compliant renewal before your next flight or an alternative acceptable document in hand before you reach the checkpoint. And this is where it gets crazy. TSA officers at domestic checkpoints have no discretion on this rule. There is no process for a sympathetic officer to wave through a non-compliant traveler who seems genuinely surprised. There is no escalation path that results in checkpoint access without compliant identification. The rule is binary, compliant identification or no access, and the only moment to solve it is before you arrive at the airport. If this updated your understanding of what changed at airports in June 2026, hit like and share it with every traveler you know before their next trip. Subscribe because the next video covers the 8 passenger rights that took effect alongside these rule changes. Protections covering compensation, accessibility, and service standards that airlines are legally required to honor and almost never volunteer. That one is coming very soon.